Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to continue a series on cracking the coding interview book, the #1 software book for software engineers, software developers, and recommended by top companies in the world. Today we're going to be solving a problem called zero matrix. Feel free to pause the video just to read through what the problem is asking for. However, I find the examples more descriptive, and not just the examples. Also keep in mind that this is also a LeetCode problem. So let's just take a look quickly at what the LeetCode problem looks like. This is the exact same problem. Again, feel free to pause it just to read through and make sure. But it says, given a matrix like this, okay, we want to return a matrix where if there's a 0 in any index of the input matrix, every row and column of that turns to a 0. So kind of like this. Okay, so given something like this here where the zeros are this, we want to return every row and column of the zeros turn to zeros. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. However, there's some constraints. Okay, I like to focus on these three. The first one says a straightforward solution is O of mn, which is technically I'm going to call this a quadratic space. We're going to follow this. We're not going to use O of mn because it's terrible. The second says big O of m plus n, which I'm going to call a linear space, right, where m and n is just the length of the rows and columns, the dimensions of your input matrix. Okay, we're also going to stick to this. We're going to do this. However, we're going to ignore this last one for today's solution. So again, let's go back to our cracking the coding interview. Same problem. These are the same three constraints that were given in what I just showed you on LeetCode. Again, like I said, we're gonna ignore this last guy for now. So I'm just gonna highlight him in. Let's highlight him in a color that isn't too harsh on your eyes. So without further ado, let's go ahead and solve this problem. How do we wanna tackle this? Okay, first is to pick my color. So here's how we're gonna tackle it. Using the example that was given to us, the first one where we had a matrix of values 1 1 1 0 in the center, 1 1 1 1 1. Okay, this is what we have. We want to somehow change this into our output, right? And our output is going to be something like this. Okay, 0's in the center, there's 1 here, 1 here, there's 1 here, and there's 1 here. Okay, so keep in mind the rows and the columns of wherever we have a 0 becomes 0. So we're trying to move from the first matrix to the second matrix, from this guy to this guy. To do this, okay, I would like to do two things based on the hints we were given. First, I would like to draw out the indices of this matrix. Okay, obviously this is index 0, this is index 1, this is index 2, this is index 0, this is index 1, this is index 2. That's firstly. Secondly, I would also like to create two new array variables for now. I'll create these two new arrays and I'll initialize them to a value of 1s. 1 1 1, and I'll call this guy is our column array. He's just to keep track of the columns. Okay, then I'm also gonna create a second array who's gonna be my row array. Initialize him to 1 1 1. Since we have 3 rows and 3 columns, it's 1 1 1. This guy is going to be who I call my row array. So far that's pretty straightforward, right? Now into the actual algorithm. So all we're gonna do now is we're gonna write a nested for loop that's gonna look something like this. For I, okay, I is just gonna go from 0 to the length of our matrix. I'm just gonna say math, as I mean this is what our matrix is called. Then for j is gonna go also from 0 to the length of our matrix, so of our matrix, but the column. So let's just say matrix 0, index 0. So j is gonna go through the columns, I is gonna go through the rows. Okay, so once we do this, what do we want to do? So this is pretty much us iterating through each of these elements in this matrix. And if at any time we find an element, so if our matrix, so if math of I j happens to be 0, what do we want to do? All we're just going to do is keep track of it with these two arrays we created. So we're just going to say our row array of I is going to become 0, and a column array of j is also going to become 0. this is pretty much all the algorithm we need for now. So let's put this into practice and see how it works. Okay, so let's start from our first iteration. I equals 0, j equals 0. So we're going to ask ourselves, at this iteration, we're going to ask ourselves the question, this question right here. What is matrix of 0, 0? Okay, 0, 0 is 1. He's not 0, right? So since he's not 0, this if statement is going to do absolutely nothing. So do nothing. Okay, we're going to go on to the next iteration. I equals 0, j equals 1. What is 0, 1, right? 0 row, 1 column, this is 1. He's 1 also, we do nothing. By extension, if we go on to I equals 0, j equals 2, this is also a 1, so we do nothing. Okay, I'm gonna rule a line here. Okay, then we're gonna move on to the next index, right? So now I is gonna become 1, j is gonna become 0. Okay, and just rule a line here so we can see the clear distinction. So in this case, 1 and 0, guess what happens? Okay, it's just 1, right? So we do nothing. Okay, we'll move on. I equals 1, j equals 1. Okay, now 1 and 1, this is the first guy that is a 0. So we'll go into this if statement and we're going to do some stuff. What are we going to do? We're going to change row array of I. Okay, keep in mind I is 1. So we're going to go into row array of I and change it from a 1 to a 0. That is why initially we created the array and set it all to 1s. Okay, we're going to also do the same thing for row of j, right? I'm not row, I mean column of j. We're going to go in there and set him to a 0. That's final. So we've done stuff for this guy. So then we're going to move on, right? But we can tell that the rest of this array is all 1s. So 1 and j equals 2, nothing. So for the rest of this, we know we're going to do nothing, right? I equals 2, j equals 0, nothing. So I sped through this just because for all this we're going to do nothing. Okay, so now this leaves us the last problem. So now we've edited these arrays. What do we do now? Okay, now is going to be our second set of for loops. So we're going to have a second set of for loops, just like the previous one. For I going from 0 to the length of the matrix. Okay, for j going from 0 to the length of the columns of the matrix, we're just going to say matrix of 0. Okay, what do we want to do? We want to say if. Now we're going to look through our array, a row array and a column array. So if row array of I, okay, because I is for our rows, or column array of j equals 0. If either of this is 0, we're just going to set our matrix of ij equal 0. And that's it. We're done with this algorithm. So let's go ahead and put this in the code and see what happened. So I took the liberty of going ahead to declare a function and create our driver code. Again, I gave us 2 examples to test, matrix 1 and matrix 2, so we can test on our call on our function, and we go ahead and call the function. So let's go ahead and edit this code and see what is supposed to happen. Okay, so first, like I said, we're going to create our row. Okay, we're going to initialize him to 1s of length. Okay, that's the first. Then our columns, which are the 2 arrays we talked about, 1s of length. His length needs to match the columns of the matrix, so I'm just going to say mat of 0. Okay, then I'm going to have my 2 for loops for I in range. What range? Length of, actually, since I'm just going to change this top one to mat so he matches. Okay, so for I in range of mat, what do I want to do? Okay, it's going to be a nested for loop for j in range mat of 0. Okay, so now we have our nested for loop, just pretty much exactly like we did in here in our notes. We're just gonna say if, so in this first for loop, we're just traversing through our matrix. If math of ij, if we're on any index that happens to be equal to 0, we're just going to set our row array of I index and our column array of j index equal to 0 and 0. Okay, so that's for this. So now once we're done with this, we're going to have a second set of for loops, okay, which is going to pretty much be the same as this. So just for readability purposes, I'm going to put a space in between just so it's more readable, but again, it's white spaces. Python pretty much ignores white spaces. Okay, so now I'm going to iterate through this matrix a second time and say if either my row array of I, if either this guy equal 0 or this guy equal 0, either of this case, what do I want to do? I just want to go ahead and set that guy to 0. Set whatever index in the matrix to 0. Okay, then in the end, I'm just gonna go ahead and return my matrix. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this code. I believe everything looks okay from a coding standpoint. Go ahead and run it. Okay, so let's go and see our LeetCode. So when given this input, we're expecting 1 0 1 0 0 0 1 0 1. Okay, when given this first input, 1 0 1 0 0 0 1 0 0, which is correct, right? Let's try matrix 2. Okay, let's run that. Again, when given this input, we're expecting 0 is the first row, 0 4 5 0. Let's see. 0 is the first row, 0 4 5 0, and 0 3 1 0. 0 3 1 0. So that's it for the video, guys. I believe this is the correct solution. However, remember we ignored this last constraint. Okay, this will be for our next video, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you, guys.